This sequence is taken from Bernardo Bertolucci's Il Conformista, a film released in 1970. Based on Alberto Moravia's novel that was published in 1951, the film follows Marcello Clericci's life, from early childhood to his role in the assassination of Luca Quadri, a college professor, and his position in the Secret Service. This sequence is taken from the point at which Marcello and his mother go to visit his father Antonio at the asylum that he is in. In the moments before this sequence begins, Marcello has been to his mother's villa to collect her, so that they can go to see his father. As the sequence at the asylum begins, we learn that Antonio has been driven mad by the torment of his past as a violent fascist, writing a memoir based on these experiences, as Marcello interrogates and goads him about his past exploits in order to provoke a reaction from him. This sequence displays Antonio's lack of authority at the hands of his son and Franz, the doctor at the asylum, as he readily submits to his son's goading and welcomes the restraint that is imposed by Franz. In this sequence analysis, I will discuss the ways in which the mise-en-scène and cinematographic techniques employed by Bertolucci throughout this part of the film expose and demonstrate the authority of Mussolini's fascist Italy and the impact that it has had on those who have found themselves involved with the regime, with long-lasting and devastating effects.
Come andiamo, Franz?
Oggi meglio di ieri. Ieri siamo stati molto male.
Ah, molto male.
Abbiamo dovuto indossare la camicia di fuoco.
E oggi?
Oggi meglio. Il vento alimenta l'ispirazione.
Io non mi stancherò mai di ripetere. Se lo Stato non si modella sull'immagine dell'individuo, come potrà l'individuo modellarsi sull'immagine dello Stato? Eccetera, eccetera. Strage e malinconia. Strage e malinconia.
Antonio, tuo figlio ha deciso di sposarsi.
Marcello si sposa. Strage e malinconia.
Guarda. La partecipazione di notte.
Smettila, Marcello, è tuo padre.
Mi piace, metti la firma. Leggi, è meno pazzo di quello che sembra. Potrei restare un momento solo con mio padre? Quando ero piccolo, mi raccontavi le tue spedizioni punitive.
Non lo so, non ricordo niente.
Perché te ne vergogni? È importante per me. Quando eri sano, tu usavi il manganello.
Sì.
E davi l'olio di ricino.
Sì.
E non hai torturato?
Sì.
Non hai ucciso? Hai anche ucciso!
Vattene! Franz! Franz!
One of the most visually striking features of this sequence is the presence of seemingly endless lines of rectangular marble benches, on which those who are incarcerated in the asylum are sitting. The presence of this architecture alludes to the rigidity and strength of Mussolini's regime, as the benches occupy much of this outside enclosure, with the same design replicated on the tiles of both the floor and the walls. The material and design of these architectural features indicate the remaining influence of the fascist movement, with marble being a common material for Italian fascist architecture, with rectangular shapes also featuring in these constructed landscapes through the medium of windows, doors, and in this case, the entire composition of the asylum. The numerous benches provide the sense that there are multiple occupants of this asylum, and that despite them being enclosed within it and the systems that are implemented there, the asylum covers a vast physical area. Therefore, there is a strong sense of juxtaposition in this sequence, as despite sitting in the centre of an outside, and therefore usually considered to be open area, those who have been deemed to be mad find themselves entrapped within the boundaries of both the asylum and the regime of Mussolini. The positioning of these identical benches at equal distances from each other reinforces the idea of order and structure that was implemented by the fascist regime at this point in Italian history. Critic Józef Leszicki states that these benches dwarf the characters and become visual signifiers of their subordination to the fascist state, as they seemingly disappear into the mass of cold marble architecture, demonstrating the solidity, power, and efficiency of this group, as well as the implementation of the social and political hierarchy that existed in fascist Italy in the years that followed. However, despite this apparent dwarfing of the characters, throughout the sequence those who inhabit the asylum are positioned and can be seen in the background of multiple shots. This is evident throughout the dialogue between Marcello and his parents, acting as a constant reminder of the impact that this regime has had on those who have lived through it and experienced the trauma that it has imposed on the Italian people, regardless of their position in society. The only one of the patients that we hear speak in this sequence is Antonio, Marcello's father, whilst the others all sit or stand isolated around them, staring blankly ahead of them, each seemingly absorbed in their own thoughts and trauma. Any movement from the patients is repetitive, with one man rocking repeatedly backwards and forwards, whilst Marcello, his mother, and Antonio speak to each other. The repeated shots of patients, such as this one in the background, act as a constant reminder of this trauma, as they display characteristics that are commonly associated with madness and insanity, such as rocking repeatedly and staring blankly into space. This demonstrates their lack of presence and position within society, as most of them have been reduced to speechless shadows of their former selves, condemned to a life of isolation and silence. The patient who is rocking backwards and forwards is also visible in an extreme close-up shot of Antonio's head and face. This extreme close-up emphasises Antonio's reaction to the announcement of Marcello's upcoming marriage, showing a moment of optimism and life through the ability to see his eyes and the glimpse of lightness that returns to them at this point, as he gradually raises his head from his memoir and gazes towards Marcello and his mother with a smile forming on his lips. However, Antonio quickly lowers his eyes back to his writing and the repetition of the words slaughter and melancholy, whilst the image of the patient rocking backwards and forwards remains. At this point the shot is in shallow focus, as the patient is seen simply as a blurred figure that is placed at the back of the shot, behind the detailed and close-up image of Antonio's facial expression. This patient does not disappear from the background of the shot and the sight of the spectator, despite Antonio's temporary burst of enthusiasm, demonstrating that nothing can draw him out of his trauma and madness, and that it will forever exist as a part of him, acting in the background of his thoughts and drawing him back into himself and his insanity, demonstrated once again by the lowering of his head. The theme of madness and the harshness of the fascist movement is reinforced through the lighting that is used in this sequence. This sequence has been filmed using natural light on a cloudy day, causing the white sky to seemingly merge into the architecture of the asylum, strengthening the sense of entrapment and incarceration that the setting of the asylum produces and portrays. This natural lighting also causes the white marble architecture to look much harsher and as though there is no sense of warmth within or escape from the constraints of the asylum, causing all of the architectural elements to combine into a mass of white, only contrasting with the dark colours of the clothes worn by the patients, Marcello and his mother. All the characters, with the exception of Franz and any of the other asylum workers that are present in this scene, are wearing dark colours such as brown or black. This is especially significant with regards to Antonio, who is wearing a black straitjacket. Christopher Wagstaff states that this has historical and political connotations, explaining that the fact that Marcello's father's straitjacket is black is the superimposition of fascist black shirt onto medical straitjacket, which is normally white. This juxtaposition of societal norms and Antonio's reality once again denies him the opportunity to escape from his fascist past, as he is condemned to wearing black, a colour that was strongly associated with the fascist movement. The costumes that are worn in this sequence also denote the social status of Bertolucci's characters, as Marcello and his mother are both smartly dressed, with Marcello's mother even wearing fur and pearls in order to affirm and assert her status within society. Contrastingly, Antonio is dressed in a straitjacket, with his hair being blown around by the wind, deepening the look and sense of insanity that he portrays to the spectator. The only sound that we hear as this sequence begins is the gusting of the wind as it blows around the outside of the asylum. This wind further emphasises the theme of isolation and solitude that is present, as there is no dialogue between any of the patients. The silence of the wind is broken only by the dialogue that we hear between Franz, Marcello and his mother before they begin to speak to Antonio.
Come andiamo, Franz?
Oggi meglio di ieri. Ieri siamo stati molto male.
Ah, molto male.
Abbiamo dovuto indossare la camicia di fuoco.
E oggi?
Oggi meglio. Il vento alimenta l'ispirazione.
Io non mi stancherò mai.
The first part of dialogue that we hear is generated by the authority figures in this sequence, rather than any of the patients at the asylum, demonstrating that there is a distinct divide between the two groups of people that we encounter over the course of this sequence. This is also evident through the composition of the characters, as Marcello and his mother stand over Antonio, looking down on him, with Marcello only lowering himself down to the same level by sitting down in order to goad and torment his father. These characters remain the authority figures for the duration of the sequence, further affirming their superiority above the inhabitants of the asylum and deepening the divide and hostility that exists between Marcello and Antonio. The authority that is presented through the dialogue between father and son is also demonstrated in a physical manner, as Marcello takes control of Antonio's hand, using it to force him into signing the piece of paper, leaving Antonio completely powerless both mentally and physically, both in the form of his incarceration in the asylum due to his mental state, as well as due to the physical control that is exerted on him by his son at this point. In physically controlling his father's hand, Marcello further reduces his status in society, belittling him before leaving him to be tied up in a straitjacket, walking away without looking behind him or showing any sort of concern or affection towards him. As a result of this, Bertolucci places emphasis on the hostility and divide that exists between father and son, with his mother even warning him, "Stop it, he's your father," as he begins to goad him. This goading continues throughout the sequence, as Antonio turns his back on his son and tries to escape from his words of torment and torture. At this point, music begins to play, increasing the tension and showing the build-up of Antonio's madness and anger.
Perché te ne vergogni? È importante per me. Quando eri sano, tu usavi il manganello.
Sì,
E davi l'olio di ricino.
sì,
E non hai torturato?
sì.
Non hai ucciso? Hai anche ucciso.
Vattene! Franz! Franz!
This non-diegetic music gradually builds up at the same time as Antonio's rage, before he eventually lashes out at Marcello. The music reaches its climax as Antonio turns back to face the camera, waving his arms around before positioning them across his body in order that Franz can tie up the straitjacket. The rapid increase in tension that is portrayed by the music acts as a mechanism for displaying Antonio's emotions as they build up, eventually erupting into a furious, but also seemingly pleading and desperate outburst as he shouts at his son to go away. This music continues until the end of the sequence, as Franz ties up the straitjacket, even after Marcello and his mother have walked away and are about to leave the asylum, showing that the torment that Marcello has just inflicted on his father will remain, even after he departs. As Antonio is being restrained by Franz, the camera pans away from them, following the footsteps of Marcello and his mother, once again reinforcing their authority, power, and importance. To conclude, in watching and analysing this sequence of Il Conformista, it becomes clear that the asylum is a location in which those who have been psychologically impacted by the fascist regime are both physically and mentally entrapped. In this sequence, contact with the outside world, in the form of the visit of Marcello and his mother, functions only as a mechanism for agitating and reminding Antonio of his former self and the crimes that he has carried out, causing him to become irritated and frustrated. The cinematographic techniques employed by Bertolucci throughout this sequence act as constant reminders to Antonio, ranging from the fascist-style architecture to the taunting and goading that is conducted by Marcello, prohibiting him from forgetting about and escaping from the trauma that has been imposed on him because of his actions, demonstrating that his fascist past will remain a part of him, whether due to the silence and solitude of the asylum, or due to the torture and torment that is imposed on him by his son and the hostility that exists between them.